And Minister, just before I let you go, I do want to ask you about something else that you and the Prime Minister announced today. That's sanctions on Iran. More specifically, I should say, on their so-called morality police due to all the protests that are going on there after Mahsa Amini died in their custody. And more specifically, I just wanted to ask, you announced the sanctions writ large, but you haven't identified the individuals who will be sanctioned. The U.S. has done that already when they made the announcement. So I'm just wondering what timeline you have for the announcing exactly who will be sanctioned.
So very soon. Like you mentioned in your question, we will be sanctioning the morality police. We will be sanctioning its leadership, and we will be announcing the different names very soon. But we wanted to make sure that Iranian women who are protesting as we speak in Tehran and across Iran knew that we were on their side supporting them, because at the end of the day, women's rights are human rights, and we stand with them.
And certainly women's rights are at the heart of what is happening in Iran. And I heard you in your speech today also talking about Canada's desire to ultimately defend women's rights right around the world. And it's in that vein then I ask why your government has not listed the IRGC as a terrorist entity.
Well, of course, our goal is to make sure that we have an approach where we're sanctioning the people of the morality police, the leadership, like I mentioned. But also, we don't have an embassy in Tehran anymore. The Harper government has decided at the time that we would be having no diplomatic relationship with Iran, and that's still the stance of this government.
I'm not sure how that answers the question about why you wouldn't list the IRGC as a terrorist entity. The House of Commons voted in favor of it back in 2018. Your government has so far refused to do so. Should the events of the past 10 days change your approach?
Like I mentioned, we are going ahead with strong sanctions. That's definitely our goal. And we've had a principled approach since the beginning. And at the same time, we're fighting for accountability for the families of PS 752. Which is another issue that we have with Iran. I'll be going to Montreal tomorrow at ICAO because we're seeking justice for these families that went through a very difficult tragedy following the reckless actions of Iran.
They did, and in fact, they specifically have called on your government to list the IRGC as a terrorist entity since it was responsible for shooting down that plane who killed their family members. Is your answer to them that that is not among the considerations of your government right now?
I think that the families of the victims and Iranians across Canada can be proud that we're moving in the right directions by imposing strong sanctions. We're doing so as the U.S. also imposed strong sanctions. And we call on other countries in the world, particularly the European Union, to go ahead and do the same.
And Minister, I'm not taking away from those sanctions or the fact that your government is levying them, but the government of the U.S., for example, has listed the IRGC as a terrorist entity. The families of the PS 752 victims would like your government to consider it. Is your government not just, I understand you're saying the sanctions are what you're pursuing right now. Does that mean that it's a hard no to listing the IRGC as a terrorist entity, especially given what's going on right now?
Vassy, you've asked me the question many times, and I've given you my answer many times. So I've given you the answer that we're sanctioning the morality police, we're sanctioning also its leadership, and we will continue to put pressure on the Iranian regime. That's our goal, and we are standing by all these women protesting around the world. That's why in our first national address this year at the UN, we specifically mentioned it. We specifically also announced sanctions during the UN speech, which is something that has never been done.